What if death wasn't the end, but just a doorway to somewhere soft, ancient, and quietly alive? Tonight, we're not just telling myths. We're stepping into them. From golden fields where heroes walk forever, to rivers that can erase your name or let you be reborn with your memories intact. This is the story of the Greek underworld, not as a place of fear, but as a hidden world beneath our own where every soul finds its place. Stay with me, because once you hear how it all connects, you'll never think of death the same way again. Before the Greek underworld had its gates and judges, before souls wandered through the mists of Hades, there was only darkness and endless possibility. In the beginning, the universe was not yet ordered. There was no sky, no earth, and certainly no place for the dead. There was only chaos, a deep, empty nothing. It was not evil or good. It simply was silent, still, and waiting. Out of this chaos came the first beings born without parents or plans. These were the primordial gods, ancient powers that shaped the universe. First came Gaia, the earth, solid and nurturing. Then Tartarus, the deep pit below the earth, dark and dangerous. Eros, the force of love and attraction, also emerged, helping all things to connect and grow. Erebus, the darkness of the underworld, and Nyx, the night itself, were born too. From them came the first shadows of what would later become the underworld. Gaia, the earth, gave birth to Uranus, the sky. Together, they became the first divine couple. They had many children, the Titans, huge and powerful beings. But Uranus feared their strength. He locked many of them deep within Gaia's body, causing her great pain. Eventually, one of the Titans, Cronus, rose against his father with Gaia's help. With a sharp sickle, he defeated Uranus and became ruler of the universe. From Uranus's fall came more strange beings like the Furies, spirits of vengeance who would later roam the underworld. Blood from the sky gods soaked the earth, and from it came these creatures of sorrow and justice, already hinting at the world of the dead. Cronus ruled next. He and his sister Rhea became the new rulers of the heavens and earth. They had many children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus. But Cronus had heard a prophecy. One of his children would overthrow him, just like he had overthrown his father. So, each time Rhea gave birth, Cronus swallowed the child whole. Rhea was heartbroken. When Zeus was born, she tricked Cronus by giving him a stone wrapped in cloth instead of the baby. Zeus was hidden away, growing strong in secret. One day, he returned, forced Cronus to release his swallowed siblings, and together they fought a great war, the Titanomachy. For 10 long years, the Olympian gods battled the Titans. Mountains shook, oceans boiled, the sky cracked with fire. In the end, the Olympians won. The Titans were thrown down into Tartarus, that deep dark pit below even the underworld. Guards called the Centimanes, giants with 100 hands, kept watch to make sure they could never escape. After the war, the universe had to be divided. Zeus took the sky, Poseidon took the sea, and Hades received the underworld, the realm of the dead. Though it was not a punishment, it was a dark and lonely place. But Hades accepted his role with quiet pride. The world needed balance, and someone had to care for the souls of the departed. The underworld became a vast and complex place, hidden beneath the earth. It was not just one room or cave, it was a full kingdom with rivers, fields, gates, and shadows. Souls from the world above journeyed there after death. Some would rest peacefully, others would suffer, but all would find their final place. As the underworld took shape, its rivers were among the first features formed. The 5 rivers flowed through the land of the dead, each with its own mood and magic. First was Styx, the river of hatred. Gods swore oaths on this river, and breaking that oath brought a terrible punishment. Its waters were dark and cold, circling the underworld like a boundary. Then came Acheron, the river of pain. This was the path most souls traveled upon arrival, guided by the silent boatman Charon. He ferried the dead across the waters if they had a coin to pay him. If not, they wandered the shores, lost and waiting. The third was Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Souls who drank from Lethe would forget their past lives. Some believed this was a mercy. Others saw it as a curse. Fourth was Phlegethon, the river of fire. It flowed with flames instead of water, burning without destroying. Some said it bordered the prison of Tartarus itself. Last came Cocytus, the river of wailing. Its waters were made of tears, and the cries of the suffering echoed endlessly along its banks. At the center of the underworld sat Hades, king of the silent realm. He ruled not with cruelty but with order. The dead belonged to him now, and he would not let them go. Beside him sat Persephone, queen of the underworld, though her story had not yet begun. The entrance to the underworld was hidden somewhere in the living world, often said to be found in deep caves, cracks in the earth, or beyond far-off oceans. Once a soul passed the edge of life, it could never return, not without help from the gods or some powerful magic. At the gates of the underworld stood Cerberus, the great three-headed hound. Fierce and loyal, he allowed the dead to enter but never leave. His growls kept souls from escaping, and his eyes saw through lies and disguise. Once inside, each soul faced judgment. They were taken before three judges, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. These were once mortal kings, now given the duty to weigh each soul's deeds. A good life led to the Elysian fields, a calm and peaceful place. A life of cruelty might end in Tartarus, where punishments waited. Most, however, drifted into the Asphodel Meadows, a gray, dreamlike place for the ordinary dead. And so the underworld was not a single fate, but a mirror of life. Peace, punishment, and everything in between. It was a place of memory and shadow, silence and truth. In this part of the tale, we see the ancient beginnings of Death's kingdom. A place shaped not by horror, but by balance. A realm where every soul has a path and every life is remembered. As we drift further into this world, the stories will grow deeper. We will meet Persephone. We will walk beside heroes who entered the underworld alive. We will discover the loves, battles, and mysteries that echo beneath the earth. But for now, rest gently in the knowledge that the underworld is not a place of fear, but of final peace. Persephone's descent and the seasons of sorrow. And so the underworld stood quiet, hidden beneath the earth, its gates watched by Cerberus, its rivers flowing endlessly. But soon, a story would begin, one that would shape both the land of the living and the dead. Above the ground, in the bright world of sun and sky, there lived a young goddess named Persephone. She was the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, who loved her more than anything else in the world. Wherever Persephone walked, flowers bloomed, birds sang her name, the earth opened up in joy beneath her bare feet. Persephone was joyful and free, untouched by sorrow or fear, but the peace of her days would not last. In the shadows of the world below, Hades had seen her. Silent, stern, and lonely in his great kingdom, he watched her from afar. He saw her light and warmth and wanted her by his side, not as a prisoner, but as a queen. And so one day, while Persephone picked flowers in a green meadow, the ground beneath her trembled. From the earth burst Hades in his golden chariot, pulled by black horses. Before she could cry out, he had swept her away. The earth closed behind them, leaving only petals behind. The meadow fell silent. The sky dimmed. And Demeter, feeling something break inside her, began to search. Below, in the underworld, Persephone stood stunned. Hades tried to comfort her, offering her a throne, jewels, and eternal honor. But Persephone was not moved. Her heart cried out for the world above, for sunlight, for her mother, for freedom. Time passed differently in the underworld. Days felt like moments or years. Above, Demeter searched every land, every ocean, calling her daughter's name. No answer came. Crops began to die. Trees lost their leaves. Hunger spread. The world grew cold and still. The gods noticed. Humans began to suffer. No offerings came. No temples were filled. Finally, Zeus intervened. He sent a message to Hades: Persephone must be returned. Hades agreed, yet he was not ready to let her go completely. As Persephone prepared to leave, he offered her a final gift, a handful of shimmering pomegranate seeds. She accepted, unaware of the rule that bound the underworld: if one eats the food of the dead, they are tied to that realm forever. She ate 6 seeds. When she emerged from the ground, the earth bloomed once more. Demeter rushed to her and embraced her tightly. But joy quickly faded as the truth was revealed. Because she had eaten of the underworld's fruit, Persephone could not stay entirely in the world above. A compromise was made. For 6 months of each year, Persephone would remain with her mother, bringing spring and summer. For 6 months, she would return to Hades and the world would grow barren, waiting for her return. And so, the seasons were born. Spring for reunion, autumn for farewell, winter for sorrow, summer for joy. In the underworld, Persephone changed. She was no longer just the daughter of Demeter. She became queen of the dead. Her steps grew calm and measured. She learned the names of the rivers, spoke gently to new souls, and stood beside Hades not in chains, but in dignity. Together, they ruled over the quiet realm, not with cruelty, but with balance. Hades respected her. Persephone gave the underworld grace. The underworld, once a place of silence, now had a heart that beat with rhythm and memory. Every soul that entered passed beneath Persephone's gaze. And though she could not free them, she could witness their stories and guide them gently. Deep in the midst of this realm, there were more mysteries still. There was a place called Asphodel Meadows where most souls wandered. These were the ordinary people, the farmers, the travelers, the mothers, and children. Their lives had not been heroic or wicked. They simply were. And so, they wandered the soft gray fields, memories of life fading like distant dreams. Not far from there, in a golden land called the Elysian Fields, the souls of heroes and the blessed found peace. Here, the air was warm, the skies always clear, and the winds carried music and laughter. This was the reward for virtue, a place of rest and joy. And then, deep beneath all this beauty, far below even the rivers, lay Tartarus. It was not just a prison for the Titans. It was a place of punishment for the cruelest and most wicked of souls. Their eternal sentences were carried out. One such soul was Tantalus, who had offended the gods by offering them a terrible feast. Now he stood in a pool of water beneath a fruit tree, but whenever he reached for food or drink, they slipped away. Forever hungry, forever thirsty. Nearby was Sisyphus, who had cheated death not once but twice. Now he pushed a massive boulder up a hill only for it to roll back down each time he neared the top. An endless task without reward. Then there was Ixion, bound to a spinning wheel of fire, punished for betrayal and arrogance. And the Danaides, 50 sisters who had murdered their husbands. Their punishment was to carry water in leaking vessels, forever filling, forever emptying. But not all in the underworld was torment. Some came seeking knowledge. Some came with courage in their hearts. The next to step into this quiet land would not be dead, but living. A hero was soon to walk its winding paths, facing ghosts and riddles. A poet would sing to shadows. A warrior would weep before judges. And the gates of the underworld would open, not to receive the dead, but to test the living. Orpheus and the Song of Shadows. And so the gates of the underworld stood still once more, but not for long. From the land of the living, a sound began to echo, soft, haunting, and full of sorrow. It was the sound of a lyre played by hands trembling with grief. The hands belonged to Orpheus, a mortal whose music could move the stars and whose heart had been broken. Orpheus had once known joy. He had fallen in love with a nymph named Eurydice, and she had loved him in return. Their days were filled with laughter, their nights with songs. But happiness in the world of mortals is often brief. On one quiet morning, Eurydice wandered through a field. A snake hidden in the grass struck her ankle. The poison worked swiftly. She fell to the earth and her spirit slipped away down into the underworld. When Orpheus found her lifeless body, something inside him shattered. He sang and the trees wept. He played and rivers slowed their course. But no matter how he mourned, she did not return. And so Orpheus made a choice no ordinary man dared to make. He would follow her alive into the realm of the dead. He traveled far, past the places where men lived and gods watched. At last, he came to the entrance of the underworld, where the river Acheron flowed and Charon waited with his silent boat. Orpheus did not pay with coin, but with melody. He played a song of love and loss, and the boatman, overcome with sorrow, ferried him across without a word. At the gates, Cerberus growled and barked. But as Orpheus strummed his lyre, the great hound lay down slowly, his many eyes growing heavy with sleep. Even the ferocious guardian could not resist the beauty of that music. Deeper Orpheus went, past the meadows of the ordinary dead, past the quiet groves of Asphodel. Shades turned their heads as he passed. The winds fell still. Even in Tartarus, the tortured paused their cries to listen. Tantalus no longer reached for fruit. Sisyphus let his stone roll. Finally, Orpheus stood before the thrones of Hades and Persephone. He did not plead with words. He played, and in his song was everything: the warmth of Eurydice's smile, the weight of her absence, the ache of loving someone who is gone. The melody filled the entire underworld like mist, gentle and lingering. For the first time, Hades' gaze softened. Persephone's eyes welled with tears. They had seen many souls, many sorrows, but never a love so deep. And so they granted Orpheus's wish. Eurydice would return with him. But there was one condition: he must not look back at her until they both reached the world above. Not even once. Orpheus agreed. He took the path back, his feet light with hope. Behind him, silent and nearly invisible, Eurydice followed. Step by step, they climbed through the shadows, past the drifting souls and the sleeping hound. Orpheus did not look back, though his heart burned with longing. He could feel her presence like a warm breeze behind him. But as the first light of day touched his face, doubt whispered to him, What if she wasn't there? What if it had all been a trick? Just one glance, he thought, just to be sure. And so, just before they reached the surface, Orpheus turned. And in that moment, Eurydice vanished. She was pulled back into the underworld, her face calm and forgiving, her eyes full of silent farewell. This time, there was no second chance. Orpheus tried to follow again, but the gods did not allow it. Heartbroken, he wandered the earth, his music now filled with sorrow deeper than any ocean. He sang to the stars, to the mountains, to the empty sky. In time, Orpheus faded from the world of men, but his song remained. It echoed forever in the halls of the underworld, a reminder of love's power and love's fragility. The gods of death were not cruel, but they were bound by law, by balance, by silence. What was lost could not always be reclaimed. Still, Orpheus was not the only one to enter the underworld while still alive. Others would come, heroes with swords, seekers with questions, hearts full of courage or desperation. One would come searching not for love, but for justice. His name was Heracles, son of Zeus, and his task was to steal a beast from the realm of the dead itself. Another would come not to take, but to learn, to ask questions no living man dared ask, and receive answers from spirits long at rest. And each time the veil between life and death was crossed, the underworld stirred, not in anger, but in quiet wonder. What made a soul leave the world of the living was sorrow, but what made one return from death was something greater still. Heracles and the 12th labor. The underworld had grown used to the tread of shadows, to the hushed voices of the dead and the rare music of mortal grief. But one day, its silence was broken by something different. Heavy, purposeful footsteps. Not soft or mournful, but strong and steady. A living man had returned again, not in sorrow, but in duty. Heracles, son of Zeus, and the mortal Alcmene had already faced beasts and giants. He had wrestled lions, cleaned vast stables in a single day, and captured monstrous creatures. But now his 12th and final labor led him to the deepest place of all, the underworld. His task was to bring back Cerberus, the three-headed guard dog of Hades. Alive, unharmed. It was not a challenge of destruction, but of courage and respect. Before he descended, Heracles sought guidance. He visited the city of Eleusis, where sacred rites were taught, rituals to prepare mortals for contact with death. There he was purified and blessed, for none could walk into the land of the dead without reverence. Then he traveled down through deep caverns, through the lands where light faded and silence thickened like fog. He reached the banks of the river Acheron, where Charon stood once again. But Charon did not want to ferry this man of muscle and bronze. Heracles was not a ghost. He did not belong. So Heracles stepped onto the boat anyway, and the boat, sensing the power of a demigod, stayed afloat, trembling beneath his weight. Past the rivers they went, past the slow drifting souls. And then Heracles stepped onto the dark soil of the underworld. The dead stepped aside. In the shadowed halls, Hades met him. He was not surprised. He had seen many fates unfold. He asked Heracles why he had come. Heracles bowed, not in fear, but in honor. He explained his labor, his vow. He would not harm Cerberus. He only wished to complete his trial and return the beast afterward. Hades, stern and fair, agreed. You may take him, the god said, if you can subdue him without sword, without spear, with only your strength. So Heracles walked to the gates, where Cerberus waited. The massive hound growled, each of its 3 mouths snapping with fangs like swords, eyes glowing like coal. The snake-like tail hissed, but Heracles did not draw a weapon. He opened his arms and stepped forward. With muscles forged in battle and will stronger than iron, he wrestled the beast. They struggled, earth shook, shadows trembled. But at last, Heracles wrapped the hound in a mighty grip. Cerberus stilled, not defeated, but bound by honor. And so Heracles carried him up. For a time, the underworld stood empty of its guardian, its gates unguarded. But no souls dared flee. They knew that their time had passed. Their world was here now. Once above, Heracles showed the creature to Eurystheus, the king who had assigned the labors. The sight of Cerberus was so terrifying that Eurystheus hid inside a large jar, trembling with fear. But Heracles did not mock him. He returned Cerberus to the realm below, keeping his promise. The underworld accepted its guardian back. Heracles had succeeded, not with blood but with strength and respect. Few mortals had entered the underworld and returned. Fewer still had done so without bringing destruction. But Heracles had done what was asked, and he had kept the balance. The stories of such crossings spread. People began to wonder, could the underworld be more than just a place of endings? Could it be a place where courage was tested? Where souls, even dead ones, held truths the living needed. One such soul was the blind prophet Tiresias, who had died long ago, but whose wisdom lived on. Many who sought answers came to speak with him. His spirit wandered the asphodel meadows, whispering to the winds, seeing with more than eyes. And among those who came seeking truth was a king from a far land, a man named Odysseus, weary from war, tossed by the sea, and desperate to find his way home. To do so, he would need to ask the dead. And thus, another journey to the underworld would begin, not for love, not for glory, not for labor, but for knowledge. The underworld waited again. Not as a prison, but as a place of stories. A place where the living might still listen to the echoes of those long gone. Odysseus and the wisdom of the dead. The sea had taken him far. Storms had scattered his men. Monsters had threatened to end his journey before it began. But Odysseus, king of Ithaca, still held on to one hope, to return home. Yet the way was hidden and no map could guide him. So he sought something that few dared to ask for, the wisdom of the dead. He traveled not to the gates of the underworld itself, but to the edge of the world where the mists were thick and the air tasted of silence. There, on the shore of a dark and shadowy land, Odysseus followed the instructions of the enchantress Circe, who had told him how to speak with the spirits. He dug a trench in the ground. Around it he poured milk and honey, wine and water. Then he sprinkled barley and whispered solemn prayers to the souls of the dead. Finally, he took a black ram and made a sacrifice, letting the blood flow into the earth. The ground grew still. Then it began to stir. From the shadows came the spirits of the dead. Drifting, murmuring, drawn by the scent of blood. Odysseus stood firm. He held his sword over the trench, keeping the spirits at bay until one soul arrived. It was Tiresias, the blind prophet. Though his eyes saw nothing, his soul saw everything. He drank from the trench, and his ghostly form grew strong. He spoke in a voice like wind through stone, calm and wise. He told Odysseus the truths he needed, of dangers to come, of patience to keep, and of the choices that would lead him home or away from it. Others came to the blood, one by one. Odysseus saw his fallen comrades, men who had died on foreign shores. He saw his own mother, Anticlea, whose death he had not known. When she drank, she spoke to him gently, her words full of love and warning. The dead spoke not with fear, but with memory. They longed not for revenge or rescue, but to be remembered. Each soul had a story, a name, a reason to still whisper into the world of the living. Odysseus wept as he listened. Not from fear, but from understanding. He learned that death did not silence all. That beneath the earth, there were voices still. Before leaving, he saw the ghost of Agamemnon, the great king who had led the Greeks to Troy. Agamemnon told him of betrayal, of murder at his own hearth, and warned Odysseus to be careful when he returned home. Then came Achilles, the greatest warrior of their time. Odysseus praised him, calling him a hero of heroes, forever honored among the dead. But Achilles answered with quiet words. I would rather be a poor man on earth, he said, a servant to another, than be a king among the dead. Odysseus listened. He bowed his head. And he understood. Even in glory, death was cold. Even for heroes, memory was the only light. At last, the shadows began to thin. The blood in the trench dried. The voices faded. Odysseus stepped back, away from the place between worlds. He had heard what he needed. His ship waited. The sea would rise again. But now he carried something more than directions. He carried the weight of all who had come before him. He would return to life, to struggle, to storms, and finally to home. But part of him would always remember the soft voices beneath the earth. In the underworld, the spirits returned to their places. Tiresias wandered once more. Anticlea drifted through the meadows. Achilles, though restless, stood tall. The underworld was not a place of fire or endless pain. It was a mirror of memory, a place where the past waited quietly, whispering only to those who dared to listen. Not all who came to the underworld did so with a body. Some came in dreams, in visions, in trance. Priests and poets, seers and sorcerers, those with the gift of second sight. Some entered not through caves or rivers, but through the mind. They spoke with shades. They walked through halls made of mist. And they returned changed. In temples across Greece, sacred rituals mimicked death's soft chants, quiet footsteps, blindfolded initiates. They reenacted the passage into the land of the dead, hoping to emerge wiser, kinder, more whole. The underworld was not just a place below. It was an idea, a truth, a journey. And still, it watched and waited for the next soul, the next voice, the next story to unfold beneath the earth. The judges of the dead and the paths beyond. As the soul drifts downward, past the fading light and the murmur of the living world, it reaches a place where choices must be made, though the one making them is no longer alive. Here, in the heart of the underworld, stand three ancient judges. They are not cruel and they are not kind. They are steady, silent, and fair. Their names are Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. Kings in life and now judges in death. Each soul that reaches them brings more than just a ghostly shape. It carries its life like a cloak of smoke, trailing behind it every deed, every word, every thought that shaped its time among the living. The judges do not ask questions. They see the soul's truth laid bare. Rhadamanthus weighs the souls of those from the eastern lands, careful and precise. Aeacus judges the westerners, quiet and thoughtful. Minos, the final voice, holds the deciding word when judgment is unclear. His gaze pierces through illusion, through excuses, straight to the core of what a soul has done and why. And then the path is chosen. For many, the destination is the Asphodel Meadows, a soft, quiet place beneath pale skies. Here, the souls of ordinary people drift like wind through tall grass. Not punished, not praised. Simply resting. These are the ones who lived without great cruelty, without great virtue, neither heroes nor villains, just human. They do not cry. They do not rejoice. They remember in fragments. They wander in gentle circles, as if waiting for something forgotten. But not all are sent there. Some few are guided away from the soft fields and toward a place far more beautiful. A realm hidden deep within the underworld, known as the Elysian Fields. There, the sky glows with golden light. The grass is green and endless. Trees bloom forever, and music rides the breeze. This is where the great and the good go. Not just the mighty, but the just, the kind, the brave, those whose lives brought peace, healing, or wisdom to others. In Elysium, there is no pain, no hunger, no fear. The souls here are not only at peace, they are joyful. Some say that if a soul reaches Elysium and then chooses to be reborn, not once but 3 times, and lives with goodness each time, it can finally escape the cycle of death altogether and rest forever in the Isles of the Blessed. But for others, the path winds down, darker and heavier. These are the souls judged guilty of great cruelty, of selfishness, of betrayal that poisoned lives. They are led past the meadows, past Elysium, and beyond a boundary that no gentle soul would wish to cross. Here lies Tartarus. It is not a realm of fire, but of shadow. It is deeper than deep, ancient, even older than the gods. A prison not only for the worst of mortals, but for the defeated titans, the monsters, the enemies of balance. Souls here are not merely punished. They are transformed by regret, weighed down by the memories they cannot flee. Their suffering is not because of torment by others, but because they finally see themselves truly and fully. Tantalus, always reaching for fruit he can never taste. Sisyphus, always rolling his boulder, never resting. These are not random punishments. They reflect the choices of life, mirrored into eternity. And so the underworld is not a single place, but many. Each soul finds its home based not on wealth nor fame, but on the simple truth of how it lived. Yet between these realms, there are rivers. We've already crossed the Styx, the great river of unbreakable oaths, and Acheron, the river of sorrow where many enter. But there is also Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Souls who drink from its waters lose their memories, washed clean of grief and joy alike. This prepares them for rebirth to live again without the weight of their past. And for the rare soul who seeks truth, there is Mnemosyne, the river of memory. Drinking from it means remembering everything, each life lived, each face loved, each lesson learned. Few choose that path. Memory is a powerful gift, but also a heavy one. And so the underworld flows, a great and quiet realm with soft groves, endless fields, and deep caverns. Above it all stands Hades, unmoving but ever watchful. By his side sits Persephone, queen of balance, bringing grace to death's domain. They do not speak often, but they do not need to. Every whisper, every step, every soul that passes beneath the earth, they feel it all. And still, the underworld waits for the next soul to arrive, for the next tale to unfold, for the next ripple across its still waters. Persephone's return and the seasons of the soul. Deep within the underworld, where light rarely touches and time moves like a forgotten river, There is a throne made of obsidian and flowering roots. Beside the stern god Hades sits the queen, not just of shadows, but of change. Persephone. She was not always a queen. Once, she was simply Kore, a maiden of spring, daughter of Demeter, the earth goddess. She ran barefoot through meadows, her laughter as bright as the petals she scattered. The world bloomed wherever she walked. The earth was warm and full of promise. But one day, as she wandered near a field of narcissus, the ground cracked open, and from that gap rose Hades, lord of the dead, in a chariot drawn by black horses. In a moment that changed the world, he took Persephone down into his realm. Not with fire, but with silence. The earth closed over her and spring was lost. Demeter searched, frantic and grieving. As goddess of the harvest, her sorrow was powerful. The crops withered. The trees bore no fruit. The world grew cold and hungry. Mortals cried out, not knowing why the seasons had turned so cruel. Eventually, Demeter discovered the truth. She pleaded with Zeus, king of the gods, to bring her daughter back. And Zeus, seeing the damage done to the living world, agreed. But there was a rule among the dead. If one eats food in the underworld even a little, they become part of it. They are bound. Persephone, in her time below, had eaten 6 seeds of a pomegranate, bright red like drops of fate. And so, a deal was struck. For each seed, Persephone would spend 1 month of the year in the underworld. The rest, she would return to the world above. And thus, the seasons were born. When Persephone rises, Demeter rejoices. Spring awakens, flowers bloom, the sun lingers, crops grow and life bursts forth. But when Persephone descends again to sit beside Hades, Demeter mourns. Autumn settles, leaves fall, the world becomes quiet and still. In this rhythm, life and death are forever linked. But Persephone herself had changed. She was no longer the innocent maiden. She was now queen, both light and shadow. In the underworld, she brought a kind of grace, a gentleness where once there was only stillness. The souls of the dead looked to her not in fear, but in comfort. She became a symbol of renewal, proof that even in the darkest places, growth was still possible. Many souls whispered her name with gratitude. They saw in her the memory of spring. The idea that even in death, there might be beauty. That loss could lead to transformation. Persephone, unlike Hades, had walked both worlds. She knew what it meant to laugh in sunlight and to sit in silence. She understood longing, both a mother's and a lover's. And that gave her power unlike any other. Sometimes she would walk the asphodel meadows, soft-footed, her fingers brushing over the drifting souls. Sometimes she would visit the deep corners of Tartarus, not to judge, but to witness. Her presence was gentle, never loud, yet it was felt everywhere. Mortals told stories of her with reverence. In the Eleusinian mysteries, secret rites were performed in her honor. The initiates believed that through Persephone, one could understand death not as an ending, but as a passage. A descent followed by return. A shadow followed by light. A winter that always gave way to spring. To follow Persephone's story is to follow the soul's story. We all descend at times. Into sadness, into stillness, into loss. But like her, we may also rise again. The underworld is not a place to be feared, it is a part of the cycle. A necessary pause. A quiet resting ground between journeys. Even Hades, often seen as cold, was not cruel. He ruled with order, not chaos. He did not hunt mortals or bring war. He simply received. He guarded what was given and kept the boundaries firm. And in Persephone he found balance. She reminded him and us that even in the depths, there is always a hint of blooming. As Persephone prepares each year to leave the underworld, the halls grow quieter. The dead, sensing her departure, seem to drift slower as if holding their breath. And when she rises, the world above stirs awake. Children run through fields again. Trees stretch toward the sky. And in quiet corners of the earth, tiny green shoots break through the cold soil. Not everything is forever lost. Some things, even after descending, return. And so, the queen of the underworld carries both seeds and sunlight, darkness and dawn, silence and song, and the world turns again. The heroes who journeyed below. Persephone's tale is one of descent and return, of balance between the worlds. But there were others, mortals, who dared to enter the underworld while still alive. Not many, just a few. Heroes who stepped into the darkness not out of punishment, but out of love, or bravery, or need. One of the earliest and most haunting was the story of Orpheus, the poet whose music could move even the coldest hearts. Orpheus had a gift. When he played his lyre, birds stilled in the sky. Trees leaned toward him. Rivers slowed their rush to listen. His songs weren't just beautiful, they held power. He fell in love with Eurydice, a woman as gentle as the breeze and as quiet as twilight. They married under open skies, and the world seemed to hold its breath in joy. But joy in mortal life is fragile. Eurydice died young. A snake's bite, sudden and cruel, stole her away. One moment she was there, the next she was not. Orpheus grieved with a sorrow too deep for words. But instead of giving up, he did the unthinkable. He followed her. Not in death, but in body. He journeyed to the underworld. He walked past the edge of the living world, past the river Acheron, past the fields of the forgotten. And as he moved deeper, he played. His music, soft and aching, wrapped itself around the shadows. Cerberus, the three-headed hound, lowered his heads and whimpered. The judges paused in their weighing. Even Hades looked up. Orpheus reached the throne and played one final song. A song of love lost, of hands no longer held, of mornings never seen again. He asked for Eurydice's return. Not to cheat death, but to undo a cruelty. He did not demand. He pleaded. And for the first and only time, Hades said yes. But with a condition. Eurydice would follow Orpheus back to the surface. But he must not look back. Not once. Not even to check if she was there. If he turned around before they both reached the world above, she would vanish forever. And so they walked. Orpheus led the way, the path dark and silent. Behind him, he could not hear her footsteps. He could not be sure. Every doubt became heavier. Every moment stretched longer. Was she there? Had Hades tricked him? He longed to see her face, to be sure. Just as the first light of the living world touched the tunnel ahead, he gave in. He turned, and there she was, Eurydice, just steps behind, eyes wide, reaching toward him. But too late. She was pulled back, her form unraveling into mist. No cry, no sound, just the silence of sorrow. Orpheus tried to follow again, but the underworld does not grant two chances. He returned to the surface alone. His lyre fell silent. He wandered empty of song until time itself faded his name into memory. But his story remained a lesson in trust, in love, and in the thin line between hope and fear. He was not the only one to walk among the dead. There was Heracles, strong and brave, who was sent to fetch Cerberus as one of his 12 labors. Not to steal the beast, but to bring him to the surface and then return him safely. Heracles entered boldly. He did not plead. He asked. And Hades, respecting courage, agreed on the condition that Heracles use no weapons. He must subdue the beast with strength alone. And he did. Cerberus, fierce and terrible, snarled and fought, but Heracles held fast. He dragged the creature into the light, showed it to the world, then returned it to its place unharmed. Even a heroes might bend to the rules of the underworld. Then there was Theseus and Pirithous, who foolishly decided they would marry daughters of the gods. Theseus sought Persephone herself. But some realms are not to be touched. When they entered the underworld uninvited, Hades saw through their arrogance. He welcomed them to a feast and invited them to sit. But as they did, they found their bodies rooted in place. The stone held them. They were trapped. Years passed. Theseus was later rescued by Heracles. But Pirithous remained, punished not for love, but for pride. The underworld opens its gates for many reasons: grief, strength, madness, or fate. But it is not a place for mortals to linger. Those who enter carry the mark with them forever. They return changed. Their eyes hold more shadow. Their words carry more weight. They speak more softly, as if remembering something others can't quite hear. Because to walk in the land of the dead is to understand life more deeply. It is to know how short it is, how precious. It is to feel the breath in your lungs and know it is a gift. The rivers that shape the dead. In the land beneath the earth, where light fades into memory and time folds in on itself, rivers flow, not with water, but with essence. They are not rivers of geography, but of meaning. They shape the journey of the soul as surely as mountains shape the wind. There are 5 rivers in the underworld, each with its own nature, its own current, its own truth. The first, and perhaps the most solemn, is the Styx, the river of oaths. This is the river gods themselves fear. Its waters are dark, dense, and cold. When the immortals swear by the Styx, their words become bound in the fabric of fate. To break such an oath is to lose one's voice, one's place, sometimes even one's life. The Styx encircles the underworld like a black ribbon, a border that cannot be crossed lightly. It hums with the weight of unbreakable promises, carrying the echoes of every truth and every betrayal. Then there is Acheron, the river of sorrow. This is where most souls arrive. It is the threshold, the passage from life to death. Its waters are not angry but mournful, quiet, heavy with the tears of those who leave things unfinished, unsaid. Here, Charon ferries the dead across, and in his silence, the weight of all those last goodbyes lingers. Next is Phlegethon, the river of fire, but this fire does not burn with heat. It burns with memory of passions, of pain, of regrets too fierce to fade. The souls who wander near its banks remember what it meant to feel, to desire, to lose. The flames reflect not punishment but intensity. It is where the heart's echo lives on. Then there is Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Souls that prepare to be reborn drink from its soft, silvery current. With each sip, memories slip away, names, faces, joys, sorrows, all dissolving like mist. Only the pure essence of being remains. It is a mercy, perhaps, to forget, to begin again with a clean slate. But not all choose Lethe, some seek the Mnemosyne, the river of remembrance. This river is not for the many, it is for the few. For the souls who desire to awaken, who want to carry forward every truth, every lesson, every step of every life they've lived. To drink from Mnemosyne is to embrace all that you were and all that you were becoming. The Orphic mysteries, secret rites whispered by poets and priests, taught of this choice. Drink from Lethe and return to the world without memory. Drink from Mnemosyne and awaken to a higher path, a soul that remembers. Even in the land of the dead, there is choice. These rivers do not simply divide the underworld. They define it. They form the moods of the realm, the undercurrents beneath every shadow and whisper. A soul drifting near the Styx may find itself remembering the promises it broke. A soul brushing against Acheron may recall the moment it let go of a hand for the last time. Near Phlegethon, flames may show the face of a love once lost or a rage once held. Lethe brings peace. Mnemosyne brings awakening. The gods themselves respect the power of these rivers. Even Hades, ruler of this domain, does not control them. He allows them to flow, ancient and sacred. They are older than temples, older than prayers. They are the veins of the underworld, and through them flows the very truth of mortality. Souls are not stagnant in this realm. They move slowly like leaves on still water, drawn by the pull of one river or another. Some rest, some wander, some wait. And always, always, the rivers sing. Not in words, but in feeling. You do not need to understand the language. Your soul remembers it. And as you listen closely, the currents begin to speak not only of death, but of life. Of beginnings as well as endings. Because in the underworld, endings are not final. They are simply transitions. The rivers mark those transitions with grace, not with judgment. They guide you, not with hands, but with memory and forgetting, fire and silence, sorrow and truth. And somewhere between Lethe and Mnemosyne, between forgetting and remembering, the soul finds itself. Not lost, just still. And so the rivers continue their slow, eternal flow beneath the world, unseen but never unfelt. The fields of asphodel and the quiet majority. Not every soul who enters the underworld is judged for greatness or guilt. Most are simply human. They did not conquer nor betray. They were not villains nor heroes. They lived, they loved, they worked, they wept. And when their time came, they passed quietly into the realm below. These souls do not walk toward punishment or paradise. They drift into the fields of asphodel. This place is not dark nor bright. It is gray and soft, a twilight meadow stretching into forever. The air is quiet, the ground blanketed in pale asphodel flowers, ghost white and silver gray, swaying without wind. Here, souls do not suffer. But they do not celebrate either. They simply are. They wander with gentle steps, not in pain, but in stillness. There is no rush, no fear, no hunger. Just a soft forgetting. The people you see here are bakers, shepherds, mothers, and children. Soldiers who fought without cruelty. Lovers who lived without glory. They are not forgotten, but they are at rest. Each soul in asphodel carries the dim memory of who they once were. They might remember a favorite song or the way the sea looked from their village. But names, ages, and endings blur. And still, it is not sad. There is peace in asphodel. These meadows are not punishment for the ordinary, they are a sanctuary. A reflection of how most lives truly are, full of quiet moments, small acts of kindness, soft struggles, and simple joys. In this place, there are no kings, no judges, no battles, only the hum of the earth and the faint trace of footsteps in the grass. Occasionally, a soul will pause and look upward as if sensing something far beyond the soil, perhaps the light of a life once lived. Then they continue walking. Not searching, not fleeing, just moving. And this too is part of the balance. Not every soul is called to Elysium. Not every story needs thunder to be worthy. In the fields of Asphodel, we find the dignity of the invisible majority, the billions of lives that touched the world without shaking it. Here, time does not press. There is no urgency, no duty, only memory slowly fading like ink in water. But even here, there are echoes. Some poets say the wind in Asphodel carries music, faint and strange, perhaps the lingering notes of Orpheus or the distant weeping of Demeter during Persephone's descent. And some claim that, once in a long while, a soul will awaken, will remember something too strong to fade. A great love, a promise, a moment that binds them still, and they will look toward the rivers again, toward Mnemosyne, toward rebirth. But most do not. Most remain, not trapped, not sad, just still, just home. The fields of Asphodel are the heart of the underworld, not its throne, not its judgment, but its softest breath. They remind us that even after death there is gentleness, that most of us will not fall or rise, but float. And that floating in this place is enough. It is said that the gods look down on the fields of Asphodel with a kind of tenderness. They see the faces of those who prayed to them in passing, who lit a candle or left an offering, who whispered thanks at harvest or wept for a lost child. They see them and remember them not for greatness, but for being human. And maybe that is the truest kind of immortality. The asphodel flowers bloom forever, but never too brightly. The skies above are always dusk, never dark. The footsteps of souls are quiet, but unending. And through it all, the underworld holds them. Gently, without judgment, just as they are. Elysium, the Isle of the Blessed. Not far from the fields of Asphodel, but set apart in tone and light, lies a place few souls ever reach. A place not of stillness, but of gentle joy. It is not gray, but gold. Not silent, but softly singing. This is Elysium, sometimes called the Elysian Fields or the Isles of the Blessed. It is a realm of reward, of rest, not for the ordinary, but for the rare few whose lives shined with virtue, heroism, or divine favor. Poets, prophets, warriors who fought not for greed but for justice, these are the ones who find their way here. To be placed in Elysium is not a matter of wealth or birth. It is a reflection of the soul. The land is said to be beautiful beyond words. Rolling meadows lit by a golden sun that never burns. Trees heavy with fruit that never withers. Rivers that sing, not with sorrow, but with laughter and memory. There is no death here, no aging, no sorrow. Time itself seems to pause in reverence. The air is warm and sweet, always the perfect season. Those who dwell in Elysium do not float or fade. They walk freely. They dance. They speak. They remember. Here, the heroes of old find peace. Achilles, who once stormed the walls of Troy in grief, is said to walk these fields now with calm steps, his heart no longer heavy with rage. Hector, who died with honor, may rest nearby. Even poets like Hesiod and Homer were believed by some to have earned a place among the Golden Hills. The souls in Elysium live without burden. They enjoy music, stories, and friendships rekindled beyond time. Some say they dream, not of what they left behind, but of what might come next. A soul's eternal unfolding, without pain or loss. Unlike the fields of Asphodel, where memory dims like dusk, in Elysium, memory shines like dawn. And yet, Elysium is not the end for all who reach it. For those whose souls are placed here, if they prove themselves 3 times pure, through 3 lifetimes, they may go beyond even Elysium. They may be reborn again and again until they reach the highest state. This final reward is known as the Isle of the Blessed, a paradise beyond paradise. There, the soul rests in perfect stillness, not asleep, not awake, simply whole. But such reward is rare and rarely sought. Most who enter Elysium remain. There is no shame in staying. The land itself welcomes them with open arms. Its grasses never grow old. Its winds never chill. It is not a land of extremes, but of perfect peace. There are no kings here, no palaces, only open skies, flowing music, and companionship among the most radiant souls of history. In the underworld, where shadows and sorrow often rule, Elysium is the warm heartbeat that reminds us. Not all endings are loss. Some are arrival. And as the soul rests here, embraced by golden light, it no longer longs for what was or fears what may come. It is enough to breathe without pain, to remember without grief, to exist in a place where love never faded and joy never rushed away. This is the reward for a soul that lived with courage, kindness, or brilliance. This is the gentle promise that even in a world of death, there is light. Elysium waits, not with pride, but with grace. And those who walk its fields walk not as ghosts, but as themselves, fully returned, fully known. And so, while most souls drift in asphodel and others find rebirth or judgment, a few rise to golden meadows where time forgets to move. They do not rule. They do not rest alone. They simply are free. Tartarus, the depths below the depths. Beyond the meadows of asphodel and far beneath the golden skies of Elysium, there lies a darker realm, Tartarus. It is not merely another region of the underworld. It is below the underworld. A place older than Olympus, older even than Hades' rule. Deep in the belly of the cosmos, Tartarus is where time slows, where light never touches, and where punishment waits for the few who truly earned it. But let us tread softly. Tartarus is not for most souls. It is not the fate of those who made mistakes or lived without greatness. It is for the terrible, the treacherous, the gods who defied the natural order, the beings who tried to rise above fate and tore the world in doing so. This place is not noisy with screams, it is quiet with weight. The kind of silence that feels like pressure on the chest. The very walls of Tartarus seem to breathe, not with life, but with old power. The first to be cast into Tartarus were the Titans. After their war with the Olympians, the mighty battle called the Titanomachy, they were defeated and thrown into this vast chasm. Zeus himself sealed them away with chains forged by the Cyclopes, buried in darkness, surrounded by great walls of bronze. Here lies Kronos, once the king of the cosmos. Time himself, bound in timeless shadow. His side lies broken and his dreams never rise. He is not tortured by flames or blades, but by the weight of what he once was. Beside him rest Iapetus, Crius, Hyperion, and others gods of sun and stars and force, now fallen to silence. Tartarus is not a fire-filled hell. It is a prison of eternity. No escape, no noise, only consequence. Later, mortals and demigods were cast here too, but only the worst. Tantalus, who fed his son to the gods in secret, lives in eternal hunger and thirst. He stands in a pool of water that always slips away from his hands, beneath branches of fruit that always rise just out of reach. Sisyphus, who defied death and tricked the gods, is condemned to push a boulder uphill forever. Every time he nears the top, it rolls back down again. Not because he is weak, but because he is clever, and the gods feared what that cleverness might do. Ixion, who dared to lust after Hera herself, is bound to a flaming wheel that spins endlessly through the void. Their punishments are not just physical, they are reflections of their crimes. A mirror held up to the soul. Even here, the punishments are poetic. The Greeks did not imagine fire and demons. They imagined justice, shaped to fit the crime. And yet, even Tartarus is part of the order. It is not chaos. It is balance. Without Tartarus, the cosmos would tilt. Without darkness, there can be no light. And deeper still, Tartarus is not only a place, but a being. A primordial force. Older than the gods. A vast pit that existed before the world was shaped. A yawning presence beneath all things, holding the worst of creation within itself. The gods respect Tartarus, but they do not visit it. Even Hades, ruler of the underworld, does not command it. He guards the dead. Tartarus holds the unforgiven. Between its walls, time forgets to move. There are no seasons, no sky, just the quiet echo of eternity. But even here, there is no hate, only gravity. This place does not judge, it contains. It holds. It reminds that power misused has a cost, that ambition without mercy has a limit, that the world, though vast, has shape and order. Tartarus, though feared, is not evil. It is a space of truth, the raw, final truth for those who tore the world and did not weep for it. And so, while souls drift peacefully in asphodel, rejoice in Elysium, or wait silently by the rivers, far below them all, in the deepest cracks of creation, Tartarus remains. A reminder, a silence, a boundary that even gods cannot cross without cost. And the souls who dwell there do not sleep. They endure. The circle of return, rebirth, and the memory river. The underworld, for all its depth and silence, is not only about endings. Hidden among the shadows and meadows, deeper even than the rivers and beyond the echoes of Tartarus, lies something unexpected, a beginning. A whisper of life waiting to rise again. For some souls, death is not a forever home. It is a pause, a stillness before a new breath. The Greeks believed in reincarnation, that the soul could return to the world of the living, but only through the most mysterious part of the underworld, the river Mnemosyne, the river of memory. Most souls drink from Lethe, the river of forgetting. It wipes their pasts clean, allowing them to enter new life unburdened. A fresh start. But that forgetting also means the soul loses who it once was, no longer remembering love, sorrow, or self. But for the rare few, poets, philosophers, seekers, another choice waits. They may find Mnemosyne, the river that flows like silver moonlight through the deepest parts of the underworld. This river remembers. It holds every life ever lived, every name, every face, every story. To drink from it is to remember all you were and still choose to return. And so, the souls who choose memory over forgetting are reborn consciously, stepping back into the world of the living with a sense of purpose, of wisdom, of something deep they cannot always explain. Some say this is how prophets are made, or why certain children seem wise beyond their years. They remember, not with words, but with feeling, with dreams, with echoes. And even for those who drink from Lethe and forget everything, the soul still remains. Changed, perhaps, but eternal. Their life in the underworld leaves quiet marks on their spirit, like wind shaping stone, slow and soft. This idea of return weaves the underworld into a great circle. Life becomes not a line, but a spiral, always moving, always connected. Death is no longer a wall, but a turning door. Even the gods respect this mystery. Some say Persephone, queen of the underworld, watches over the souls who choose rebirth, that she gives them a final blessing as they cross into the world again. Not with a crown, but with a whisper, a promise that they are never alone. That Hades himself, though somber, allows their passage with quiet honor. He does not cling to the souls, he holds them as long as they need, and when they are ready, he lets them go. And so, a soul rises, perhaps into a newborn child taking its first breath, or into a quiet stream of thought waiting in a poet's heart, or into a dream felt but never fully remembered. The Greek underworld, for all its solemn paths and ancient gates, is not a place of despair. It is a reflection of balance, of choice, of peace and pain, memory and forgetting, stillness and return. There is room for everyone here, for the mighty and the meek, for the cruel and the kind, for those who long for silence and those who seek to rise again. And in the end, it teaches us this, that death is not the enemy. It is a part of the story, a chapter, not the closing line. As the soul returns to the world, reborn or remembered, the underworld remains behind, not as a prison, but as a sanctuary of echoes, holding the past until the future is ready. And somewhere, far below the surface of the world, the rivers still flow. The flowers still bloom. The judges still sit in silence. And the gates of Hades still open, not in fear, but in welcome. And now, the gates of Hades close softly behind us. We have walked every path, through fields of forgotten names, over rivers of memory and silence, past thrones and shadows, punishments and peace. But in the end, the Greek underworld wasn't a place of fear. It was a mirror, a quiet reflection of how we live, how we remember, and how we let go. For every soul, hero or humble, there is a resting place, a moment to breathe, a chance to begin again. So sleep now. Let the myths hold you. Let the rivers carry your thoughts like fallen petals. The journey is over, but the story still lingers softly, gently, like a dream that knows your name. Good night.